London, 1764. Before the soot, before the factories, before the streets thickened with iron and filth, there were alleys that ended in darkness and whispers that passed through cracks in stone. In one such alley, where St. Ethelstan's chapel leaned crookedly against a crumbling wall, a child went missing. Her name was Clara, and she was 6 years old. They found her slipper by the chapel gate, stiff with wax. No one had heard a scream. No one had seen a struggle. She simply vanished during Vespers while the bells tolled. Miriam, her aunt and only guardian, tore through the streets that night, her voice raw from shouting the child's name. The watchmen were no help. They muttered about the cold, about wolves, about the river, but Miriam knew better. St. Ethelstan's had always stunk of wax. The priest, Father Aldwych, had strange habits. He barred the doors to the undercroft. He spoke too softly. He held no funerals, and on certain nights, when the city fell still, Miriam heard humming from the chapel tower, low and tuneless, like a mouth trying to recall a forgotten song. She waited until midnight, then took a lantern and a knife and slipped through the vestry. The chapel was colder inside, silent. The pews were covered in a thin layer of dust, as if no congregation had come in months. Candles burned at the altar, 20 of them, arranged in a perfect circle. Their flames didn't flicker. Beneath the altar, a trapdoor. She opened it. The staircase descended into blackness. No light, no smell. Just a pressure, as if the air resisted being disturbed. Miriam stepped down into it. She heard the humming again, but this time it was many voices. Children, dozens. Humming not in unison, but close. Too close. Their tones overlapped, weaving through one another like threads pulled tight. At the bottom, the crypt opened into a round chamber. There were no coffins, no tombs, only a circle of children standing still, eyes wide, mouths parted, humming. And in the center stood Father Aldwych. His robes were black, his face was wet with wax, and in his hands he held Clara, her eyes open but unfocused, a red thread stitched crudely through her lips. Miriam screamed. The children turned. Their hum broke, replaced by a shuddering silence so absolute it made her knees buckle. Aldwych stepped toward her, whispering a word that cracked the air like ice. Miriam lunged. The knife met flesh. Wax bled from the wound. Aldwych fell. Clara dropped from his hands. Miriam grabbed her niece and ran up the stairs, through the chapel, into the freezing night. Behind her, the children resumed their song. Clara did not wake. For 3 days she lay in bed at the edge of the forest, eyes open, lips sealed shut with that filthy red thread. Her breathing was slow, too slow, as if she slept beneath the weight of stone. Miriam burned the robe Aldwych had worn. She scoured Clara's skin with warm water and lye, cleaned the blood from her lips, and removed the stitch one thread at a time. Still, no words came, not even a whimper. The city issued no statements. No one came to investigate. When Miriam returned to St. Ethelstan's on the 4th night, the chapel was boarded up. A new notice was posted in Latin, though the ink was smeared. The sanctuary is sealed. But Miriam knew. They were still there. She began digging, not with shovels, but with questions, quiet ones. She found an old gravedigger who once worked beneath the chapel. He spoke of bones wrapped in wax paper, of children buried without records, of a door at the end of the crypt he had only seen once, sealed in red twine, warm to the touch. He died the next day, fell into the Thames, or so they said. That night, Miriam lit every candle in the cottage. She held Clara's hand and listened to the wind. No birds sang. The trees were still. And from the woods, far beyond the road, she heard the humming again. Soft, distant, wrong. She stood and took her blade. They hadn't just taken Clara. They had opened her, and Miriam would not let them finish their song. The woods had no birdsong, no wind, only the sound, low and steady, like a throat murmuring underwater. Miriam followed the footprints deeper into the trees, lantern held high, breath sharp and shallow in her chest. The earth softened beneath her boots as if rotting from below. The trees leaned in strangely, bent like they were listening. The humming grew louder. Then she saw them. Between two yew trees stood a circle of robed figures, 12 in all, their garments black as coal and bound at the sleeves with red twine. They did not chant. They did not move. They simply stood, heads bowed, lips parted in that horrible drone. In the center, atop a ring of stones blackened with soot, stood Clara. She wore a gown Miriam had never seen before, white as fresh milk, trimmed with gold, untouched by dirt. Her eyes were open now. She stared into the canopy above her with a kind of trance-like wonder, her mouth shut, lips pressed together with something pale and waxen. Miriam stepped forward. The nearest figure turned. Its hood slipped back. The face beneath was not the one she'd stabbed in the chapel, but it wore the same look. Wax-slicked skin, eyes sealed with red thread, and a mouth that had been cut and pulled wide, the lips torn open like petals. Miriam gagged. The thing took a step forward, and Miriam lifted her lantern and flung it. Fire bloomed. The figure screamed, or tried to. No voice came, only the sound of air sucking into a hollow windpipe. It dropped to the ground, burning. The circle broke. She dashed to Clara, wrapping her arms around the girl, pulling her down from the stones. Her niece did not fight, but neither did she move on her own. Miriam carried her again, just as she had the night beneath St. Ethelstan's, and ran. Behind her, the woods shrieked, not with voices, but with something deeper, a vibration in the roots, a tremble in the bark, like the trees themselves had taken up the hymn of the hollow choir. Branches clawed at her, roots tripped her. At one point, she slipped in a puddle of something black and bitter-smelling, nearly dropping Clara. But she ran. She ran until her chest burned and her legs gave way, collapsing into a ditch where the wind finally broke the silence. And for a while, maybe an hour, maybe two, nothing came. When she looked up, the woods were still, the figures were gone, and Clara was crying. No sound came from her lips, but tears streamed down her face. Her tiny hands clutched at her throat like it hurt to breathe. Miriam pulled her close, whispering her name again and again, kissing her brow, rubbing her arms. When they finally rose and staggered back to the cottage, the sun was peeking through the trees. The birds had returned. The world, somehow, felt less broken. But Clara never sang again. Miriam knew it wasn't over. Even after they returned to the cottage, even after Clara began to move and eat and smile with her eyes, Miriam could feel the weight of something watching. So, she made a decision. She would fight them, not just to protect Clara, but to end the choir. She went back to London. The journey took 2 days. She left Clara with the woodsman's wife on the edge of the village, wrapped her blade in cloth, and made for the city with nothing else but resolve and memory. She knew where to begin, the church where Father Aldwych once preached. She found it shuttered. Dust choked the pews. The altar was cracked. Beneath it, in a hidden panel of the stone floor, she found what she sought. A small book, bound in black leather, its cover marked with the same open eye from the wax seal. The Silent Song. Inside, the pages were written in a mixture of Latin, Old English, and something stranger, a script that seemed to shift when she stared too long. But Miriam was stubborn. She read, and she learned. The choir had existed since before London had a name. They believed the universe was once silent, perfect, and that sound itself was a corruption. They sought to restore silence through sacrifice, and their God was real, the mouthless one, an ancient entity, neither dead nor living, that slept beneath the soil in the shape of a great stone head, its jaws sealed by wax and blood. The children weren't just offerings, they were vessels. Miriam closed the book. She knew what she had to do. She returned to the chapel under cover of night. It hadn't been sealed. The doors still hung loose on their hinges, but the air was heavier now. It pressed against her skin like wet cloth. She moved quickly. The altar had been repaired. Beneath it, hidden by a loosened tile, she found the narrow stone stair that led down, far down, into the old crypts. She lit a fresh lantern and descended. After what felt like a mile underground, the stair opened into a vast chamber. At the far end, rising from the ground like an island in a sea of dark wax, sat a head, a massive, inhuman head. It had no eyes, no ears, just a gaping mouth rimmed with jagged teeth sealed shut by thick wax. Below its chin, an altar constructed of bones. It did not move, but Miriam could feel it breathing. She stepped forward. No guards, no choir. She approached the altar and opened the book and began to read aloud the revocations. Words meant not to summon, but to silence. The wax began to melt. From within the mouthless one, a sound stirred, a memory of weeping. The stone trembled, the floor cracked, the talismans burst into flame. Still, she chanted. Then the wax split. From within, the mouth spilled black liquid. Not blood, not wax, but something older. 1,000 whispering tongues brushed her ears. But Miriam screamed one word in reply. "No!" And she lit the page with fire. The whole book went up in her hands. The flames caught the altar, the bones, the wax. The head itself cracked, first in its brow, then down its face, then at its base. She turned and ran. Behind her, the temple collapsed, and somewhere deep in the city, the choir felt their god's slumber deepen and knew he would not wake. Clara was waiting when Miriam returned. She stood at the edge of the forest, barefoot in the frost again. She didn't look afraid. She looked serene. Miriam dropped to her knees and held her tightly. For the first time in weeks, Clara made a sound. "Mama," she whispered, voice hoarse. Miriam cried. And in the weeks that followed, Clara spoke more. Her laughter returned, her songs, her stories. Miriam never trusted another soul with her again. And sometimes, when the wind died and the frost curled into strange shapes, she would feel that silence again, and she would hum, to keep the world awake. Years passed. The old forest grew thick. Clara blossomed. She was quiet but strong, watchful, wise. And one night, Miriam felt the hush again. She stepped outside. Clara stood beneath the trees. "They're calling," Clara said softly. Miriam nodded. "Do you hear them?" "Only faintly, but it's enough." Miriam handed her a charm of bone and thread, a gift for the mouthless. Clara took it. "I won't be afraid." And the next morning, she vanished into the woods. London, 1842. Workers uncovered a tunnel beneath Bishopsgate. Inside, a stone chamber, statues, bones, and a massive head of stone shattered into 7 pieces. None of the workers returned, and above, in the city air, no bird sang.